Welcome back to the Advocate Podcast. Last week, we talked about why advocacy matters and the importance of seeing children as children, full of potential, curiosity, and humanity. Today, we're taking that foundation one step further by examining what happens when schools prioritize discipline over development. Because when punishment becomes the default, we don't just lose instructional time. We lose opportunities to teach, to build, and to grow children into who they're capable of becoming. I'm Dr. Christy Love, and this is The Advocate, amplifying voices, challenging systems, prioritizing children. Let's go.
Dr. Christy N. Love is an experienced educator and advocate dedicated to empowering students and families to ensure children receive a high-quality education. She specializes in culturally responsive teaching, restorative practices, and social-emotional learning, helping schools create supportive and inclusive environments. Through the Advocate Podcast, she amplifies voices, challenges inequitable systems, and keeps children at the center of every conversation.
So let's start with a simple but critical distinction: punitive practices versus restorative practices. Punitive practices are reflective: suspensions, detentions, referrals, zero tolerance policies. They punish or remove, but they rarely teach. Restorative practices are proactive: conversations, reflection, problem solving, and repairing harm. They guide, restore, and teach. In classrooms I've worked in, I've seen both approaches. When a student acts out, the response in a punitive classroom often revolves around these questions: who did it? What rule was broken? How do we punish it? How do we stop this behavior quickly? Who needs to be removed? These questions focus on control, compliance, and speed. They center on the rule, not the reason, and the outcome is usually removal, detention, suspension, or referral, without teaching the child what to do differently next time. But in a restorative classroom, we ask something very different. What's happening with this child? What need isn't being met? What skill is missing? Who was affected, and how can we repair the harm? What does this child need to succeed moving forward? These questions focus on development, accountability, and growth. Consequences still exist, but they're meaningful and instructive. And here's why this matters. As we discussed last week, behavior is communication. According to brain research, children are still developing the parts of their brain responsible for emotional regulation, impulse control, and decision making. Many children are physically incapable of regulating emotions the way adults expect them to. And when you add trauma slows development, actually physically altering the brain. So when we punish behavior without understanding the message behind it, we're responding to communication with removal instead of instruction. That's not discipline. It's missed development. Restorative discipline doesn't remove accountability, it teaches it. When we teach instead of punish, we give children what they actually need to grow. So to sum it up, punitive discipline asks, how do we stop this? Restorative discipline asks, how do we teach this? Because the Advocate Podcast is grounded in real conversations, I want to spend a little time addressing narratives I see repeatedly on social media. One post I recently came across argues that schools need harder discipline, that corporal punishment should return because students today argue, disrespect authority, and misbehave without fear of consequences. The message here is clear. Punishment is being positioned as the solution to behavior. But let's be clear. Corporal punishment has never taught emotional regulation, problem solving, or accountability. It may stop behavior in the moment, but it does not develop the skills children need to manage frustration, conflict, or adversity. Fear produces compliance, not character. Now, this next part is important. So I want you to hear one post exactly as it was written. The post says, "School discipline is one area where you can see equity in action. The reason why you are seeing more kids beating each other up is that school principals and administrators, the Department of Education, and state education officials have all decided they no longer wish to police behavior in the classroom because a disproportionate share of the kids being suspended or expelled are kids of color." This post directly blames equity efforts for discipline challenges in schools, suggesting that because students of color are disciplined at higher rates, schools have simply stopped holding students accountable. That is a fundamental misunderstanding of what equity and discipline actually addresses. Equity exists because discipline decisions are often subjective. Most referrals are not for dangerous or violent behavior. They're for things like defiance, disrespect, attitude, or noncompliance. Labels that rely heavily on adult perception, cultural norms, and implicit bias. Two students can display the exact same behavior and receive entirely different consequences. Equity does not remove rules or accountability. Equity asks whether expectations were clearly taught, whether cultural differences are being misinterpreted as misbehavior, and whether consequences are applied consistently and fairly. When people argue that equity weakens discipline, what they are often resisting is the examination of how punishment has historically replaced development, especially for certain children. Children's behavior is frequently a signal of unmet needs or undeveloped skills, not a lack of consequences. Punitive approaches, whether corporal punishment or exclusionary discipline, may suppress behavior temporarily, but they do not teach self-regulation, empathy, or accountability. That is discipline replacing development. Restorative approaches don't eliminate consequences. They make consequences meaningful, instructional, and equitable. And that distinction matters. Okay, so true story. When I've shared this before, people often respond with wide eyes and, "Girl, I wish a student would cuss me out," until they hear how I handled it. Then some educators still call me foolish. So there was a student that we will call Misha. Misha had a reputation for cussing out teachers. I hadn't witnessed that personally in my classroom, and I would like to attribute that to how I began each year intentionally building relationships. I gather all types of data on my students, academic, behavioral, social, emotional, so I can make informed decisions. When someone warned me about Misha, I used that information to focus positive attention and plan targeted supports, not prepare to drop the hammer. Well, one day, Misha finally grew frustrated with me and cussed me out in class. I mean, big words. And I just looked at her and let her finish. When she was done, I calmly asked if she was finished because we'd all heard those words before. She became even more frustrated that I did not return the same energy. She jumped up and stormed out. But I knew this was her method of operation, her way of avoiding work. But I also knew life was rough at home for Misha. Later, I saw her sitting with the counselors. I waved from a distance and called her name, told her I loved her. She came to see me and apologized. We hugged. I told her she also needed to apologize to the class. When she did, the class held her accountable for naming the exact offense. What are you sorry for, Misha? I used that moment to teach that we don't throw away relationships just because someone has a bad day. We may all need grace. We will all need grace and forgiveness one day. After that day, I never had another problem with Misha or anybody in that class for the rest of the year. Misha went on to 7th grade at another school, and I don't know what happened after that, but I pray the seed we planted together continued to grow. Now, let's contrast that with how a punitive teacher might have handled the same situation. A punitive response could look like this. Misha cusses the teacher out, and the teacher feels the need to get back with Misha, to put Misha in a child's place before sending her to the office. Misha might receive a detention or a suspension, and the teacher assumes the problem is solved. The student is removed from the learning environment. The teacher avoids further confrontation, but no skills are taught, no relationships repaired, and the underlying causes of the behavior are never addressed. Misha can't stand the teacher. The teacher doesn't like Misha and talks about Misha daily in the teacher's lounge because they have constant conflict for the rest of the year. This contrast shows why it is so important for educators to be fully invested, not just in enforcing rules, but in nurturing development, teaching replacement behaviors, and building relationships that can last well beyond a single school year. Please know, restorative discipline doesn't guarantee instant results. Students often need time to unlearn old habits, just as adults. They need time to practice the behaviors we teach and model. That doesn't mean it doesn't work. Think of it like planting a garden. The seeds we plant today and water tomorrow may not sprout until next year. But if we constantly prune with harsh, punitive methods, we snip the bloom before it even has a chance to grow. Consistency and patience are key. Restorative approaches aren't about quick fixes, they're about lasting growth. Just think about it. If punitive discipline truly worked, we wouldn't continue to see discipline issues in schools or recidivism in the prison system. This is how behavior has been addressed for Lord knows how long. Clearly, punishment alone doesn't solve behavior. It only suppresses it temporarily. That's why we must teach children replacement behaviors, the skills and strategies they need to respond appropriately, and model the behavior we want to see. It's not fair to write a discipline referral for a student who raises their voice when they get frustrated, when adults sometimes behave the same way. When we intentionally model calm, respectful, and problem-solving behavior, and then give the children the tools to do the same, we create a culture of accountability and development. Restorative practices aren't just about stopping misbehavior. They're about building the skills children need to navigate life successfully. Now, to my parents. Just like educators, you play a critical role here too. Actually, you play the first role. Children are always watching how we handle frustration, disappointment, and conflict. When children escalate, parents can respond with modeling, coaching, and repair. This isn't softness, it's intentional leadership. Here are some ways parents can put restorative discipline into practice. Model the behavior you want to see. Children internalize how adults handle stress and conflict. Teach replacement behaviors. For example, if a child yells when frustrated, coach them to take deep breaths, name their feelings, or request help. Repair harm. If conflict occurs at home, guide the child in apologizing and making amends just like in school. And to go back to modeling, when we harm, we need to apologize. And communicate with schools. Align with teachers and administrators on expectations, restorative practices, and supports. Consistency between home and school amplifies growth. So here's a takeaway for my parents. We don't need to be perfect. We just need to be intentional, consistent, and committed to teaching children how to navigate their emotions and relationships responsibly. When home and school work together, children thrive. So, what I hope we all take away from today is discipline should support development, not replace it. Equity means fairness, not lowered expectations. Restorative practices build lifelong skills. And patience, modeling, and consistency matter. So when someone says schools are too soft or equity weakens discipline, remember, true advocacy teaches children to meet expectations while nurturing growth. That's how we create responsible, capable learners. Okay, so join me next week. In episode 3, Let the Child Speak, we'll hear directly from children, their perspectives, frustrations, and ideas for solutions. Their voices will show us why listening is just as important as setting rules, and will challenge what you think you know about school discipline. Until then, keep asking the hard questions, keep showing up for children, and keep advocating, because children deserve adults who won't stop fighting for them. I'm Dr. Love. See you next time.